I got up at 6 a.m. to stuff some warm things in a bag because it was time for a 3-day trip to the mountains with my friends David and Joe. We had collectively decided it was time to get away from it all, and when I say all, I am assuming you have a general year-long, possibly, understanding of what I'm referring to. For me, the over the last year has turned me into a mush of Zooms, procrastination, and emails. It also canceled my summer abroad, ended my job, kicked me off my campus twice, and possibly turned me into a sedentary lumberjack. So if you can imagine, I was very frustrated when Joe and David started making fun of me when I was able to drive us all 180 miles to the mountain and only lock the keys in the car once, something I saw as an absolute win. We arrived at the Roan Mountain in North Carolina to traverse a trail hikers have reviewed as both more than you could imagine and f***ing wet. And when we began our hike by finding a wedding happening inside a f***ing wet cloud with a groom vowing to love the most important person in his life, quote, more than craft beer, the reviews proved themselves to be already spot on. I actually found these reviews in a booklet on the trail, one of my favorites coming from Sawyer Cade, who simply wrote and declared for all time, I am 11 Years. I can from Tennessee. This trawl has kicked my butt. Loving it. Now, to be fair, most entries in this book I found on the trail weren't exactly reviews per se, many containing the same random energy as this one that just reads, Rosalina, if you are reading this, I want my microwave back. But I call them reviews because at their core, they make up exactly what I think any review is, a personal reflection, a story of one person's experience through their own eyes. This little booklet of hiker thoughts lives in the Murray Shelter, a hut about 1 mile into a very ambitious 15-plus mile loop David and Joe had planned out ahead of us. To accomplish our goal, we needed to maintain a pretty fast pace, and I hadn't done anything like this in months, but I was stoked to do it, especially with how my friends had described the views and mountains we could scale. So I went at a very fast pace, but I probably should not have gone at that very fast pace, because in my speedy and lanky trotting, 2 miles in, trying to set an impressive pace for David and Joe, I lost my footing, and I totally rolled my ankle, rolling around on the ground, shouting in pain. My friends gave me some first aid and waited to see if the trip was going to be over about a half an hour into it. And when I was laying there, I was feeling so guilty. Like, was I going to be the reason this experience was going to just end like all the other ones that have happened to be canceled this year? So I tried getting up, and it sucked. I could move, but I had to stop about every 5 minutes. Joe gave me his poles, and David watched my status with a pretty funny, consistent GPS. Joe gave me his poles, and David watched my status with a consistent GPS kind of recalculating face, which I thought was actually pretty funny. But I was able to get far enough to reach a common campsite, at which we agreed to reassess if we could continue after a good night's sleep. But I was pretty pessimistic, thinking about carrying the heavy backpacks for another 12 miles just seemed not possible. That evening I got to watch David and Joe ruin a breathtaking background with a duel, got to meet some friends who somehow found us some slices of Domino's pizza, got to dump in the bedazzled bowl, and learned to never sleep at a 15-degree angle.
Somewhere between 50 and 90.
The next morning, I did feel good enough to continue on a little bit, so we set out up the hill at our turtling pace. Regardless, again, on our way, we met a trail dog, got cooked going up a hill by the trail dog, zigzagged through some mud, and actually reached the base of one of the mountains on our loop we anticipated reaching the first day. And somehow, through a combination of these breaks, ibuprofen, and this inspiring woolworm, we actually started making our way to the top, and we reached it. It certainly wasn't how or when we expected to get there, but we did. It was here that I slowly realized that despite losing our previous plan, no one was getting hung up on that. In fact, we were truly enjoying every step. The trail dog actually came back while we were up there and tried to eat my cheese, so we started coming back down the mountain.
Yeah, careful.
Don't roll your other ankle.
And that evening we ate with some new UNCG and NASA Mars rover engineer friends, camped another moist night, and then the next day geared up to attempt the exit of the trail. To get there, we actually had to pause again at the Murray Shelter, and sitting in it while David and Joe scurried off to get some water is when I actually found and opened the notebook I've mentioned before. And I was pulled in immediately, the thoughts and the reviews of the hikers before me. Though they seemed simple on their surface, having experienced the trail they were speaking of, they meant so much more to me. And to top it off, those reviews were right. It was f***ing wet. This trail was kicking my butt. going, there's such a togetherness and an encouragement in so many of these entries. If you got this far, then your possibilities are endless. Take it one day at a time. Just think, you mean so much to someone, and one writing, one tired of where you be, take a drive to self-discovery. Trot the street lights for stars in the sky, and leave the tail lights so far behind, and hike the roans. As I read each and every one of these, I was enveloped by every entry, as evidenced by the fact that I got my phone out to record them, and I was struck by the fact that to use it, you had to walk the Roan Mountain Trail. To share in it, whether it rocked or sucked for you, you had to get there. Sure, each person came to it differently with different attitudes, ages, and levels of wetness, but they were here. Together apart, in a way, I was here, and we were here. And in a year where the apart has been much more pronounced than the together, I've developed hope from this notebook that our shared experience, however varied for each it has been, no matter what expectations or ankles are shattered, might just be something that when it's all over, brings us closer together. I give the Roan Mountain Trail 5 stars.